and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of Africa Today, where we get you the latest news and events taking place on the African scene. And we will start off with our major top stories and reports. Foreign direct investments in the African countries amounted to about $46 billion in 2021, and the Egyptian investments in the countries of the continent amounted to $13 billion. We have more details in this report.
Minister Plenipotentiary Trade Yahya Al-Wathiq Billah, head of the Commercial Representation Authority, foreign direct investments in the African countries amounted to about $46 billion in 2021, and the Egyptian investments in the countries of the continent amounted to $13 billion. Al-Wathiq Billah pointed to the importance of raising intra-African trade rates, which amount to only 18% of the total volume of trade in the continent. He emphasized the importance of enhancing joint commercial cooperation to achieve industrial integration in the African continent and benefit from the availability of raw materials needed for a large number of industries in all countries of the African continent. He pointed out in a statement the possibility of benefiting from the large industrial experiences of Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana in developing the African industry. This came during the participation of the head of the commercial representation in the fourth session of the Egypt-Can Industry Conference, which was organized by the Ministry of Immigration and Egyptians Abroad Affairs in cooperation with the Ministry of Trade and Industry and a number of concerned ministers. Al-Wathiq Billah said that the African continent represents a land of opportunities, as it includes 54 countries with a total of 1.3 billion people, in addition to huge industrial, commercial and investment opportunities, noting that the continent imports about $600 billion annually and consumes about $4 trillion according to statistics of 2020.
With our special reports, African Union head Macky Sall on Friday urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to take into account the suffering in African countries from food shortages caused by conflict in Ukraine. We have more details in this report.
The African Union head Macky Sall said that he was reassured after talks in Russia with President Vladimir Putin on food shortages caused by Moscow's military campaign in Ukraine. Putin hosted the Senegalese president, who chairs the African Union, at his Black Sea residence in Sochi on the 100th day of Moscow's offensive. Global food shortages and grain supplies stuck in Ukraine ports were high on the agenda. Putin, in a televised interview in the evening, accused the West of bluster by claiming Moscow was preventing grain exports from Ukraine. Exports could transit through the Russian-controlled ports of Mariupol or the Ukrainian-held port of Odessa, as long as Ukraine cleared the waters around it of mines. Other transport options include the Danube River via Romania, Hungary or Poland. But Putin said any export via Belarus would be conditional on the lifting of sanctions by the West against Minsk, allied to Moscow.
Welcome back. As health authorities in Europe and elsewhere roll out vaccines and drugs to stamp out the biggest monkeypox outbreak beyond Africa, some doctors acknowledge an ugly reality. The details.
As health authorities in Europe and elsewhere roll out vaccines and drugs to stamp out the biggest monkeypox outbreak beyond Africa, some doctors acknowledge an ugly reality. The resources to slow the disease spread had long been available, just not to the African who have dealt with it for decades. Countries including Britain, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Switzerland, the United States, Israel and Australia have reported more than 500 monkeypox cases, many apparently tied to sexual activity at two recent raves in Europe. No deaths have been reported, or authorities in numerous European countries and the US are offering to immunize people and considering the use of antivirals. The World Health Organization will convene a special meeting to discuss monkeypox research, priorities and related issues. Meanwhile, the African continent has reported about 3 times as many cases this year. There have been more than 1,400 monkeypox cases and 63 deaths in 4 countries where the disease is endemic: Cameroon, Central African Republic, Congo and Nigeria, according to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon, madam.
Ambassador Haridi, President Sisi addressed the first African Health Conference titled the Africa Health Ex-Con. In his speech, the president said the limited resources in African nations shouldn't be a hurdle to achieve set goals. What's your comment, sir?
Well, I guess the remarks that President Sisi made yesterday before the first Egyptian African Medical Conference, the remarks were significant, and the statistics that President Sisi mentioned about the population in Africa today and the expected population explosion in Africa from here to 2060
Yes.
are very important to take into consideration when we speak about cooperation between Egypt and the African continent, and particularly in the medical and pharmaceutical field.
Yes.
As President pointed out yesterday, Egypt has an industry, a well-developed pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
And on the other hand, it has very ambitious public health programs in Egypt that have been carried out and still being carried out in the country.
Yes.
And so I guess yesterday there was almost a roadmap made by the Egyptian president for future cooperation between Egypt and Africa in the medical and pharmaceutical field.
Yes.
Definitely, madam, this is one of the questions that would merit very close attention by African countries, taking into account that the African continent has witnessed the diseases and pandemics and epidemics in the last 4-5 decades that have taken many thousands of lives, of African lives, particularly among the youth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something yesterday the president spoke about, that almost 60% of the African population are under 30 years old. So that shows how important it is to give due consideration and attention to the medical needs and pharmaceutical needs of the growing population in Africa. And in this context, Egypt has the political will to play a significant role in providing Africa with the help that it needs today, and it needs definitely tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Sir, the president directed his words also to pharmaceutical companies, saying that Africa is a promising market and beholds the future. Now, adding that they should compete to ink deals with African nations. What's your take on this?
Well, as I said earlier, madam, the statistics that the president talked about yesterday are very important in the sense that they reflect the reality on the ground.
Yes.
Africa is the land of opportunities, but in the meantime, Africa faces various challenges, very serious challenges in many fields.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, yesterday the president spoke about the development of human resources. Mm-hmm. And in the context of development of human resources, public health issues are a determining factor. Mm-hmm. So yesterday, the president pointed out, made clear how to proceed in the future, and I'm sure that African countries would be interested in deepening their cooperation with Egypt in this field.
Yes.
And also cooperating with the African Union in the public health, in the field of public health, as well as the pharmaceutical industry, is very important, because this cooperation should be based on scientific studies, on data, very reliable data. So this cooperation could prove advantageous and beneficial to millions of Africans.
Yeah, sir, Egypt already launched a successful virus C campaign in several African countries. First of all, how has this campaign been managed successfully across the country and helped end the decades-long endemic virus C in Egypt? And how do you think it's important and critical to be implemented in the African continent?
Well, to begin with, Egypt is a pioneering African country in providing medical help to needy Africans.
Yeah.
So the competent Egyptian authorities, health authorities, as well as the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, they have an ample experience in providing medical aid and medical assistance to African countries. Having said that, Egypt yesterday, with the cooperation with the African Union, expressed its willingness to provide Africa with 30 million vaccines against COVID-19. And that's a good step on the way forward when we come to Egyptian cooperation with the African Union in the field of fighting pandemics, epidemics, and diseases. And from here, we can have a clear picture of what Africa needs in terms of medicine, in terms of medical assistance, medical health, in terms of nurses, in terms of physicians. And Egypt is willing to provide such an assistance.
Yeah.
I guess in the years to come, I believe that cooperation between Egypt and Africa in the medical and pharmaceutical field really will be increased, and will be increased considerably.
Yeah. Sir, the conference is planned to serve as an annual meeting and hub for international companies in the medical field and African countries. How will this benefit both sides?
Well, the holding such conference regularly, whether on a yearly basis, on every other or every 3 years or every 2 years, is important in the sense that it's an opportunity. It's to provide African decision makers, African governments, and the pharmaceutical industry in Africa. It provides them with the opportunity to, first of all, to follow up on the implementation of the decisions of the previous centuries, and on the other hand, to overcome any obstacles that impede cooperation among African countries in these fields. Mm-hmm. So, of course, what we have witnessed yesterday was a very promising beginning, and hopefully it would endure in the future for the benefit of all African countries.
Right. Well, sir, how would you describe Africa's needs for medical and health cooperation, especially after, of course, the coronavirus pandemic and its repercussions?
Well, Africa has been facing a very serious challenge, madam, when it comes to COVID-19. South Africa suffers from lack of vaccines, maldistribution of vaccines, medical teams that could administer the vaccines, and of course, how to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 to those who haven't contacted. And I feel hopeful as far as cooperation, international cooperation and African cooperation to deal with the challenge posed by COVID-19 for the African people.
Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the foreign minister.
Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you, sir. Many thanks for your insight. And dear viewers, that brings us to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International.